Ah, Thanks for tuning in today. Today, we are going to talk about the steps through healing. Some of my background story is when I really began this process was many years ago when I went through a divorce, and I just did not know how to be single. I did not know. And I had a business coach, but then I hired the business coach that I had ended up being more of a life coach and just really helped me take the next steps that I needed in order to go through the process. And then I have spent the last 15 years, literally it's been 15, 16 years now, just trying to heal myself, and one layer, as April Ballesteros calls it, from living unlayered, one layer led to another layer, went to another layer of healing. And I kind of like to say that it's not like an onion, it's kind of more like an artichoke, which means that you take off those layers, but the closer to the heart of the matter of the true healing, man, it gets a little prickly. It gets a little prickly before you get to eat the heart of the matter. So these are the steps over the last 15 years that I have so focused on doing with healing. And I can tell you, as we go through a lot of these stories, that it has not been an easy process. It's been a story because a lot of stuff happens, but I've had the opportunity to just keep rehoning and getting better at these situations. And life, the universe, man, when they're moving you in a direction and they want you to be a certain thing and you give yourself to the universe to do that, be ready for some growth. Be ready for some really, really good stories. So I want to talk about the 7 steps that I did, that I've learned how to do through healing. And this is what I think needs to happen. 1, you need to learn to meditate. I'm going to give you all 7 and then I'll go back and talk about them. Is meditation, learning to be mindfulness. The second thing is you need to learn to be radically accept yourself. You have to radically accept yourself in your situation. Then you get to let shit go. There's this great picture that I have, and it's of a Buddhist monk sitting there, and the caption reads, "Let that shit go." And that's exactly what needs to happen. We need to make ourselves vulnerable. Becoming vulnerable is important. Finding a purpose that's bigger than yourself helps draw you out and helps you get to the next level. You got to let go of the outcome. Quit planning every little detail. Let go of the outcome. And last, we need to learn to love ourselves. Before we can love anybody else, we need to learn to love ourselves. So let's go back to meditation and start with the first thing that we need to do. Meditation or mindfulness, I started off just focusing on my breath, just spending a few minutes learning to focus on my breath. And every time, and my mind wanders all the time. And every time I would find my mind wandering, I would have to bring it back to my breath. And that's one of the main purposes of meditation, is to learn that your mind is wandering all over the place, and you just need to come back and help yourself become more centered. When we can focus and understand that our thoughts that come into our mind and kind of sweep all over the place when we're meditating, and they come in, they disrupt our breath thing, they're just things. They're just things. It's like standing in a room and watching all the crazy thoughts and the stuff go all over. And when we can close our eyes and breathe, they find a place. But they keep creeping back into our mind. And the more times that we can watch them fly all over the place, take a breath in and come back to a centered place. That's mindfulness. That's understanding that our thoughts are just things. And until we give them power, until we start believing in every little thing that we're thinking, they have no power. They're just things floating around. They're just little dust particles and ideas floating around in our head. It's when we give them power or pay attention to them that they can be detrimental or they can be really good ideas. We don't know. But the first thing when we're starting the healing process is just to learn to be mindful. There's many ways of doing meditations, and that's down the road. But the first thing I did in the healing process was I just learned to sit quietly and focus on my breath and understand, observe my thoughts, but not own any of them. That's interesting. When they would come in and a thought would come in of something that a parent said, or my ex-spouse said, or one of my kids said, or a friend said, I just watched them float around, but I didn't allow those sticky notes flying around to attach to myself. In fact, I learned to unstick them and just watch them and not give them too much thought as I brought myself back to a breath. I took a breath in and let that one go. So again, it's not about sitting calmly and being able to focus on your breath for 30 minutes or an hour, because trust me, I still don't do that one. I still have a hard time with that one. It's just about bringing your mind back to the breath and learning to control that breath and that moment in time. The second thing, radical acceptance. It's about really looking at your own life, looking at where you are in life as the starting point, and then accepting it and realizing that, this is just how it is. It's just literally how it is. Maybe you're struggling with drug addiction or alcohol, and you just are like, man, I'm just having a hard time, and 5 o'clock comes and I have to pour myself something to drink. Just accept that about yourself. And that's where you start. And that is where you begin. Maybe your finances aren't exactly where you want them to be, and you're just not quite sure how to get there. You just need to accept what is. You need to accept the fact that maybe it's difficult for me to look at my checkbook. Maybe it's difficult for me to, I just don't feel like I manage my money well. I just am having a very difficult time eating as healthy as I possibly can. It's about radical accepting of yourself. That's the second thing. Just accept who you are or where you're at. You don't, again, those things are not necessarily who you are. It's just where you're at in life. It's just the new challenge that's there. So accepting where you're at. Now you've got a foundation of where you can walk from. You've got a starting point of where you get to go to. You're not avoiding anything. You're just accepting where you're at. It doesn't mean it's forever. You're just being realistic with yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. It's always easy to see other people's stuff, but it's not always easy to look at our own. The next thing I had to do was, and it comes with meditation, is let that shit go. Man, let it go. Let the ownership portion of that go. So for example, in AA, it's you introduce yourself and you associate yourself. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I am an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I'm this, I'm that. You got to let that go. Maybe that's an old story of yourself. So you accept it, and then you decide what part of the story do you want to keep and what part of the story do you need to regroup, because that was then, that was the situation then, that's maybe where you were at that point. I accept where I am now, but I don't have to take that baggage with me as I move forward. So you get to let that go. You get to let that baggage go. If you're having health issues, you get to accept where you're at, take a breath, and decide you're going to heal yourself. I'm going to heal myself. And you turn and you let that stuff go. You stop identifying with what doesn't work for you anymore. It's part of your story. It's always part of our story. So we want to embrace our stories. We want to put them on our heart, and that's what creates empathy with us for others and helps us. And it's part of it becomes who we are, right? It's who we are. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's our story. We all have interesting stories in life, but some of it we don't need to take with us. We just don't need to take with us. So, for example, I got to hike Mount Whitney a couple years ago, and it was amazing. It was absolutely wonderful. Am I going to hike Mount Whitney again? I don't know. I can take the memory with me, and it's a wonderful memory, but it doesn't mean that I identify so much with me being a hiker of Mount Whitney. It means that's something that I've done in my past, something I'm proud of, but I get to move on. And so many times we bring with us, we carry the crap from ourselves. We carry we forget about the good memories, but we remember the bad stuff, and we hang on to that. So we get to let that go. Remember, it's part of who you are. It's who made you today. But let it go. Just let it go. The next thing that I had to do was I had to make myself vulnerable, understanding that vulnerability is strength. We don't get to where we are alone. We don't come into this world without a little help from the universe, without a little help and push from our moms, without a little help from a doctor. We don't do anything alone. There's always somebody there to help us. And when we can make ourselves vulnerable and understand that that's strength. And maybe in order to get through something, we need to hire a therapist or a coach or a mentor, or, we need a job to get us to the next level of where we want to be. Making ourselves vulnerable is incredible strength. It's about not being scared to need something. And needing something doesn't mean you're a needy person. It just means that you need a little help and you understand. And there's that, it's the giving and the receiving portion of stuff. You get to receive help sometimes, but then we get to give help as well. And we get to impart that knowledge and that wisdom and that love on somebody else as well. So be vulnerable. It's great strength. The next thing is find a purpose. Find a purpose bigger than yourself. So when I was going through my divorce, it was one of the hardest things I ever went through. And I felt so vulnerable, and I just didn't know how to be single. And every dream that I ever had it just felt like my whole world blew up. And yet I knew I was doing the right thing and I was moving in the right direction, but I had to find a purpose bigger than myself. So I thought to myself, okay, I am going to give something. I've got to, you've got to give to receive. So I knew that, and I didn't have any money, and I thought, I can give blood. I can give blood. So I went down to the blood bank to give blood. Well, apparently I run slightly anemic, and I kind of knew this because I'd done that before, but I wasn't able to give blood. And I sat in my car. I came back out and sat in my car, and I bawled. I just broke down and I cried. I thought, man, I can't even give blood. Nobody even wants me. And I was just in such a miserable place. I thought, nobody wants me. They don't even want my blood. So I backed out. I had my Suburban at the time. I backed out, and I backed right into this lady's PT Cruiser, her brand new PT Cruiser, and put a dent in it. So I thought, man, my day cannot get any worse. And there was nobody around. I could have easily left, but I didn't. I believe in karma. So I left a note for the lady and told her what I had done and to please call me, and I had insurance, and I am so very sorry, and it's my fault, and whatever. And she called, and we got it all worked out, and she was just so appreciative that I had called. But I was feeling, as you can imagine, horrible, absolutely horrible, right? So there's this trail I like to walk at where I lived at the time. And so I went and I decided I'm going to walk on the trail. So I'm walking, and I have no energy now. I feel so depleted, can't give blood, back into a car. I have no money. Now I got to pay for that. And it was just not a fun time. So I sat down on this bench, and this and I just was, I wasn't crying. I think I was too depressed to even cry. I cried in the car, backed in the car. I was just too depressed to even cry. So I was just sitting there feeling sorry for myself, and this gentleman, whether he was homeless or not, he came up and he just sat down next to me. And so I looked at him and smiled, and and we talked and I listened, and he just, I don't really remember what he said, but I just remember sitting there and listening to him. And he seemed like just such a nice person, but he you could tell he did not have much. And I don't know if he was homeless or not or what. And I remember just saying, you're going to be okay, you're a nice person, and giving him some words of kindness, of just being kind to him. And I just kind of listened to, what he had to say. And he stood up and he turned back and he looked at me and he said, "You've given me a great gift with your words. Thank you." And at that time, I don't know if you've ever read the book Return of the Rag Picker. I just looked at him and thought, here is a guardian angel. Here is somebody who gave me something that I could give, because I really was trying to give something away. And the gift that he gave me was encouragement, and he also planted a seed for doing these videos and for talking to people and being able to give them, just to love them, just to listen to them, and just to give some kind words. It was a very surreal moment, and it was an opportunity that it didn't go past me. It's something I think of often. It's a moment in my life that gives me encouragement to continue on, to let know that, what, my words are powerful. And that became my purpose. And sometimes when we can start looking at our words and our life, and we start seeing the serendipities that happen, and that definitely was, I think, a little angel coming in and giving me some hope to move forward. The next thing that we get to do is let go of the outcome. And for some of us that have a tendency to be an over caregiver or codependent, those of us we can be very controlling, and we like to control the outcome. We like A, B, and C. When we do A, we get to B and C. A plus B equals C, period. That's how it is. So you're going to go to work, you're going to go to school, you're going to study hard, and you're going to get some good grades. You're going to play sports, and you're going to be an athlete, and you'll always be in shape. You're going to do this, and this is going to happen. And for the most part, when we do those things, it's the law of the universe. As long as we're following the spiritual laws, the universal laws, those things do happen. But there's stuff that trips us up along the way, and we have to let go of the outcome and the time frame that it happens in. Because sometimes miracles do happen, but we have to let go of the outcome. And sometimes when we're trying to control somebody else, and not just ourselves with the laws of the universe, but really we're trying to control somebody else. And we see this a lot with codependency and, doctors who deal with cancer all the time. Boy, they have to let go of the outcome a lot. That's a tough one. And every once in a while you get a win. But for those of us that are over caregivers or codependent, we honestly think that when we're there for that person and we do the interventions and we do all this other stuff, that they just need to stop. And you know what? That might not be their journey. It might not be their journey. And we could actually be part of the problem. Not part of the solution, but part of the problem. Because we're so controlling of their outcome within our time frame. And even with ourselves, we don't control the market. You do finances. If you follow the richest man in Babylon, 10% is yours to keep and 10% is yours to give away. Even though you do that, you don't know what the market's going to be. You don't know what it's going to do, or someone could steal your 10% from you. So you got to let go of the outcome and just be consistent with what it is that you're doing. And that's not easy. I am not the most consistent person in the world. And many times feel like I've stumbled through things and the outcome is not what I want it to be or what I thought it would be. And I'm wondering, oh, how in the heck did I get here? And then when I step into something and let it go, the outcome is actually 10 times better than I actually ever imagined it to be. And I found myself taking this side loop that was pretty darn fun. And if I had stayed, super consistent and projected the outcome and lived my life the way I was supposed to live, I would have missed a lot of opportunities to do a little bit of traveling, to do some hiking, to learn how to fly fish, to learn how to do some things that I had the opportunity to do. And the only reason I learned how to do it is because I deviated. And I learned some great lessons because of it. So our journeys are our journeys. And when we try to control the outcome of our own life, let alone the outcome of somebody else's journey, man, it just doesn't work. I wanted my marriage to last forever, but I did not want to be married to an alcoholic. And that was his choice. And that was my choice. So at some point you're together for what you need to be, and then you move on, and it's not necessarily what I wanted, but it's what I have. But then I look at how far and the other opportunities that I've had because of that. And man, my life would have been so predictable. And I like a little unprediction. I like some of the journeys that I've been on. So we got to let go of the outcome, because a lot of times it's so much better than we thought. The last thing that we need to learn how to do, and I will tell you that I personally struggle with this one, it's learning to love yourself with agape love. There's different types of love. There is the love that a mother has for a child. There's that, that protective love, unconditional love that you have for your child. There's the romantic love that you have for your spouse. There's the sisterly love that you have for your girlfriends or your friends and your acquaintances, your friends. And then there's agape love, which is not a feeling. It's a higher level of understanding. And if we want to love other people with agape love, we also need to learn to love ourselves. And that means we get to learn goes right back to radical acceptance. It goes back to meditation. We're learning to love ourselves. And when we can learn to love ourselves, then that light shines through others, and we can learn to love others and help others as well. Healing, when you've been through, whether you have a little t trauma or a big T trauma, or you're just in a transition in life, or life just threw you a curveball and you need to take some steps towards healing and in transition, these are the steps that I recommend you take. Meditate. Take some time to breathe deeply and just focus on your breath 2 or 3 times a day if you can. Accept where you're at. You don't have to like it, but just accept where you're at and understand that life ebbs and flows. The tide, when it's low tide, doesn't get pissed off that it's not high tide, and the high tide doesn't get pissed off when it wants to be the low tide. It just is. Life is an ebb and flow, and we need to accept if we're at a high tide or we're at a low tide. Where we are, that's where we are. It's radical acceptance. And then we need to let that shit go, man. Uncage that guilt. I like to say that as a mom, we give birth to new things. Our wombs were meant to give birth to things. As women, we give birth to ideas. As human nature, feminine energy gives birth to new ideas. And that's what we are created to do, to give birth. But when we feel guilty about something that maybe we've done, or something hasn't been so perfect, we literally block that creative energy. We need to let that shit go. Let it go. Be vulnerable. If you are stuck somewhere or you just don't know what to do, ask for help. Hire a coach. Find a mentor. Talk to a couple different people. Hire a therapist. Do what you need to do to ask for help and make yourself vulnerable. That is the ultimate strength. You'll be so glad you did. Find a purpose bigger than yourself. My good friend, his purpose is he does dog rescue, animal rescue, and he's great at it. And that is his bigger purpose. And he loves it. He's passionate about that. Find a purpose bigger than yourself. And then let go of the outcome. It is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. Let go of the outcome and have a plan, but go with the flow. Just understand that there's going to be some tangents, and if they're there, take a breath and go with it, because man, they could be more fun than what you had planned yourself. And last, man, agape love, a higher level of understanding. Understand yourself, love others. Just understand the process. Be bold. You got this. I'll talk to you soon.